There's one scene from Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds that has stayed with me over the years. Reflecting on it as an adult, I find it ironic that in a movie filled with aliens vaporizing mankind and using our blood to create a red vine, the most terrifying moment features no aliens at all, only humans. I want to shine a light on this scene and explore how Steven Spielberg, the master of visual storytelling, crafts one of the most deeply human and terrifying moments in film. The scene I'm referring to is when Ray and his two children are swarmed by an angry mob, ripped out of their car, held at gunpoint, and ultimately lose their vehicle. On the surface, it sounds like a straightforward sequence, but it's laid with story, theme, and an overwhelming sense of dread that makes it truly terrifying. If you haven't seen the film, there's quite a bit of story to unpack to fully grasp the weight of this scene. I'll recap quickly, focusing on the key elements, and then we'll circle back to the scene itself and dive into its intricacies. The story begins with Ray, played by Tom Cruise, who has a strained relationship with his two children, Rachel and Robbie. When his ex-wife leaves them with him for the weekend, it's immediately clear that Ray is more focused on himself than on parenting, highlighting the disconnect in their relationship. Things quickly take a turn when an otherworldly storm erupts, signaling the arrival of aliens. These aliens unearth massive machine tripods, begin vaporizing humans, and wreak havoc on Earth. Amidst the chaos, all electronics fail. However, Ray manages to escape his neighborhood with his kids in the only working vehicle, a minivan. They narrowly escape and set out on the road, headed to Boston, Massachusetts, where the kid's mother is. There's three things to note as we move forward to the scene. Ray has a gun, something I'll dive into shortly. They're driving the only working vehicle, and Ray's strained relationship with his children. Now, with that set up, we're ready to dive into the scene. But before we get there, let me talk about the gun. The scene I want to explore is actually set up quite early, or at least the foreshadowing of the gun's importances. Early on in the film, we get a tight shot of Ray grabbing the gun before leaving the house. Spielberg uses the close-up to quietly tell the audience, pay attention to this. Later, as Ray seeks refuge in a basement while the haunting sounds of outside grow louder, Spielberg once again draws our attention to the gun. Ray grabs it before retreating to another room, and we get another deliberate close-up. It's a subtle but clear signal from Spielberg, building anticipation for the gun's eventual role in the narrative. Yet when it finally comes, we're not expecting it, and I'll explain why later. Alright, the scene actually opens with a match cut, transitioning from Ray driving to Robbie driving, a visual choice that is both practical and deeply telling. The match cut shifts the color palette dramatically, from a warm and vibrant tone to a dark blue laced with shadows. While this clearly signals the change from day to night, the stark contrast in lighting and tone subtly cues the audience that the story has moved into a more dangerous and foreboding territory. What heightens this foreboding tension is a series of POV shots from Rachel of the outside crowd, followed by a crucial shot showing what's ahead. The crowd begins to turn, their shadowy figures silhouetted against the dim light. This adds to the ominous atmosphere, as it becomes clear that the car is driving straight into a sea of people with no other options. There's never a wasted shot with Spielberg, and this moment is no exception. Within the same shot, Ray is cleverly brought into frame through the side mirror, framing him and Robbie in a two-shot. This two shots in one feels intentionally loaded. It's as if the framing is quietly urging the audience to recognize that if Ray hadn't fallen asleep, they may have been able to avoid what's coming. Robbie, realizing the danger, wakes Ray, who quickly takes over driving. As soon as Ray takes the wheel, the tension subtly heightens through the use of lighting. The flashlights carried by the crowd begin streaking across the characters' faces, creating a sense of unease, as if they're on the verge of being exposed. What follows is a wide shot that not only answers Rachel's innocent question,
Where's everybody going?
but also visually encapsulates the mounting dread. This wide shot reveals a sign that reads Athens Hudson Ferry 3 miles, with the car inching forward deeper into the crowd. The dolly movement of the camera mimics the sensation of the vehicle being pulled into the chaos, signaling the scene's descent into pandemonium. The following shots reveal the overwhelming chaos as the crowd completely surrounds the car. Every window is packed edge to edge with faces pressing against the glass, their desperation evident. The flashlights now streak across the characters' faces with a greater intensity, while the sound of the crowd's voices begins to engulf the scene. These shots are interrupted by an intense dramatic angle looking up at Ray as he fastens his seatbelt. This brief but striking shift in perspective underscores the escalating danger, and within the otherwise smooth flow of the edit, it heightens the audience's sense of unease. A man leaps onto the bonnet of the car, shouting at Ray to let more people in. In a panic, Ray speeds up, and the man is sent flying off the car. As Ray struggles to maintain control, he nearly hits the mother and her baby, who are oddly enough framed through the broken glass just as Ray was earlier in the film. Now, the shot of Ray through the broken glass echoes his fractured relationship with his children. I'm not sure if Spielberg is drawing a parallel here, but it's a striking shot nonetheless. So yeah, Ray loses control, drives straight into a light pole and crashes the car. After the crash, we get a second wide shot of the scene, a high angle that dollies forward and tilts downward. The addition of the tilt builds upon the previous wide shot, which only dollied forward. This subtle shift in perspective conveys a sense of finality, visually reinforcing that the family has no way to move forward. It might seem like straightforward filmmaking, but Spielberg's use of these two wide shots to delineate the two acts of the scene is remarkably effective. The complementary nature of the two wide shots subtly divides the scene into two distinct yet interconnected moments. As we enter what I'm calling Act 2 of the scene, the camera switches to handheld, creating a noticeable shakiness in the frame. This shift emphasizes the next step in the panic and chaos, and here unfolds what I consider the most terrifying part of the movie. The crowd transforms into a mob. The car windows are smashed in dramatic fashion, and we see a man on the bonnet desperately tearing at the broken glass with his bare hands, cutting himself in the process and smearing blood everywhere. This haunting image has stayed with me over the years, a stark portrayal of how desperation can strip humanity down to its most primal instincts. In a crisis, rational thought gives way to fear-driven chaos, but we'll delve deeper into that later. Ray and Robbie are dragged out of the car by the mob, driven by a mix of vengeful justice and a desperate need to seize the only working vehicle. Amid the chaos, Ray frantically fights his way through the crowd, desperately trying to reach Rachel, who's still trapped in the back seat and screaming for help. The scene is pure chaos. Shouts from the mob echo around them, flashlights streak wildly across their faces, sparks from the toppled light pole rain into the frame, bodies constantly swarm in and out of view, and Rachel's shrieks pierce through it all. All of this unfolds with absolutely no music. There's no soundtrack to dictate how we should feel. It's as if Spielberg's inviting our own fears and anxieties about a situation like this to rise to the surface, making the scene feel even more immediate and personal. Bodies begin piling into the car, trapping Rachel inside, and for a moment, all seems lost. Then out of nowhere, the sound of Ray's gunshot pierces the chaos as he fires it into the air.
Take it easy! Get off the car! Get off the car!
This scene is captured predominantly in wide and mid shots, and here we suddenly cut to a close-up of the gun. This abrupt shift again disrupts the established flow of the edit, delivering yet another jolt to the audience. Look what happens if we remove the close-up of the gun firing.
Take it easy!
That sudden jolt we get from the close-up carries emotional weight that simply isn't there without it. After the close-up, the frantic handheld camera is gone, mirroring the abrupt shift in energy as a sense of order momentarily takes hold. The gunshot is as shocking to the audience as it is to the mob. It comes so suddenly that it feels like a last resort, a move no one saw coming. Spielberg's early setup of the gun pays off here in a way that feels entirely earned, elevating the moment beyond mere shock value. With the brief sense of order Ray has established, he manages to find Robbie and pull him to safety. Then comes the most striking shot of the scene, a moment that once again disrupts the flow of the edit.
Okay, man, now listen.
Delivering a sharp emotional jolt to the audience and raising the stakes one final time. All is quiet and Rachel screams. The camera whip pans off her to Ray and the camera dollies back, revealing another man holding Ray at gunpoint. This little moment is brilliant. It marks the end of the chaos, but unfolds entirely in one seamless camera move. No cuts, just effective blocking. Ray drops his gun and the man allows him to collect Rachel. The three quietly slip away into the crowd. The man climbs into the minivan, reverses it back, and the camera tilts down on Ray's gun, where another man enters frame to pick it up. We tilt back up on this man's face as he watches the car reverse off. By choosing to play all this out in one take, Spielberg keeps the audience on edge even though the chaos has subsided. We're still holding our breath, waiting to see what happens next. Ray and his two kids take refuge in the adjacent diner. Watching through the window as the car pulls away, we see the man who picked up Ray's gun shoot the driver, and just like that, the chaos erupts once more. What makes this diner moment so impactful is that while the mob descends into chaos again, we see something unexpected. Ray breaking down in tears, right in front of his kids. Up until now, Ray has been the cool guy, seemingly in control despite the madness around him. But the moment as a whole lays bare his fear, showing his children and us just how much he truly cares for them. It's a powerful turning point in their relationship, subtly moving Ray along his character arc. As I sat at my laptop writing this essay, one of cinema's most famous villainous lines kept echoing in my mind.
They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
The Joker's philosophy feels eerily relevant, and I couldn't help but think Spielberg is trying to say the same thing with this scene. This scene represents a shift in the story, where the alien threat is compounded by human desperation, showing how society's breakdown creates additional dangers. This moment signals that the safety Ray believed he could provide for his children is increasingly fragile. It's not just the aliens that threaten them, it's humanity's darker instincts in the face of survival. Spielberg taps into our primal instincts, showing how, when pushed to the brink, all rational thinking is abandoned. What we see unfold in this moment is the raw, terrifying nature of humanity, and it's that very side of humanity that can be far more terrifying than any alien invasion.